Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Espace Multimédia Gantner for this online meeting going to our exhibition Algotaylorism, Range Against the Machine, created by Aude Launay. I am Valérie Perrin, and I'd like to tell you some few words about the Art Center and Library Espace Multimédia Gantner. It's a place dedicated to the links between technology, art, society, and is located in the east of France at Bourogne, in Bourogne, and it's a part of Conseil départemental du territoire de Belfort, and it's a place free for everyone, and it's our activities are exhibition, publishing, workshop, artist residency, and we have also a digital art collection. So because of the Corona crisis, we do not have the opportunity to welcome the artists for setting the artworks in this exhibition and meeting the audience to present the artworks. So in a way, this online meeting, it's an answer to this problem and I think a good way to document this exhibition. So now let's start the meeting. Many thanks for joining us and many thanks to Joana, Moll and Zachary Formwalt for accepting our invitation to discuss with Aude Launay. Now, let's join Aude. Aude, it's up to you.
Hi everyone. Hi Joana, Valerie, Zachary. Yes, I'm really happy to talk with you today since, as Valerie said, none of you had the ability to come visit the exhibition. That, like many more now, I guess, will mostly live as a vague idea and some JPEGs on the net. So for those who don't know what it's about, the exhibition that gathers us today is the second part of my project around the idea of Algotaylorism, a term that I coined from algorithms and Taylorisms from Frederick Taylor, and not terrorism, as it's sometimes understood due to my accent. So I guess it sadly might be a research topic sooner than later. So this chapter is titled Algotaylorism, Rage Against the Machine, and the inspiration for it came from different sources, but mostly from the incredible rise of platform gigs a few years ago, as seemingly the new condition of work. In the past, as I wrote in the press statement to explain everything, in the past the man has been first. In the future, the system must be first, wrote Frederick Taylor in the Principles of Scientific Management in 1911. And from his scientific management of work to the algorithmic management of workers in platform companies such as Amazon, Uber, and Deliveroo, the evolution has been mainly technological, while on the ideological level, one notices rather a continuity. So what if our contemporary society was ultimately more hyper-industrial than post-industrial? After having explored two facets of work in the globalized digital age at the Mulhouse Kunsthalle for the first chapter, on the one hand, a division of labor taken to extremes among click workers, and on the other, a persistent machinic illusion, because many tasks believed to be performed by computers are in fact performed by human beings. The Algotaylorism exhibition continues to develop here at the Espace Multimédia Gantner in Bourogne. So this chapter, Algotaylorism, Rage Against the Machine, examines how machines have been trained to recognize and define work and workers, how they've been fed with ideas and images, how they reflect this training in their actions, but also how certain human beings try to resubjugate their artificial eyes and neurons to put them in their place as mere extensions of humans. And this appears in face-offs between natural and artificial intelligence. So the exhibition features works by Cathy Thornton from the Feminist Economics Department, Zachary Formwalt, Sam Lavigne, Silvio Lorisso, Lauren McCarthy, Joana Moll, Julien Prévieux, and Sasho Sedlacek. And with us today, we have two of the artists, Zachary Formwalt and Joana Moll. So they will present a little bit more about their work in general and the piece they are presenting in the show, and we're going to have a discussion together. So Zachary is from the US, living in Europe, and he has, among other things, exhibited at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Belgrade, at the Stedelijk Museum Bureau in Amsterdam, at Vox in Montreal, at the Vexnus Center for the Arts, Columbus, and the Kunsthalle in Basel. He also writes, and his essays have been published in Grey Room, Open, Kunstlicht, and Metropolis M. And lastly, in 2013, his film Unsupported Transit won an award at the Rotterdam International Film Festival. And I think I can also say that he teaches at the Gerrit Rietveld Academy in Amsterdam. So yeah, I mean, you know a lot about him right now, and then maybe Zachary, you can tell us more about your work.
Yeah, thanks for that generous introduction. I feel like there's an echo, but no, it's not. I think I always find it difficult to talk about my work in general. So I think what I will do is really talk specifically about this work that is in the exhibition, which is a bit of an older work for me. It was made in 2009, and it really feels like a part of a very different moment. Because it was very much attached to the whole, subprime mortgage crisis, as it was called at the time, the big like credit crunch, and then resulting from 2007 forward. And there were several works that, well, I felt like it was unavoidable to deal with that at the time. But I also felt like it be interesting to sort of distance the analysis from all the contemporary imagery that was going on. The thing was that I had for years been working on like an archive of images of economy is what I was calling it, and I was just collecting like images whenever they appeared, and began with the magazine The Economist. And then it kind of extended into other print media, mostly newspapers and stuff. I was living in Berlin at the time, and it was kind of rare to get a photograph attached to a financial story that didn't fit into like some really typical categories of like, you know, building facade, people shaking hands, a coin, this kind of stuff. So I had these categories, and I was collecting images underneath them. And then the crisis hit, and there was suddenly like this overwhelming amount of imagery in relation to financial stories, and it was all front page news and all this kind of stuff. So I decided that archive was less interesting suddenly. It was also more difficult, it wasn't more difficult, it was too easy, it was just like there were images all the time. So I started kind of looking for other stuff, and I made a film about stamps from the 19-teens and 20s. And then after that, I made this film, In Place of Capital, which is in the exhibition. And In Place of Capital kind of, this point that you make about the recognition of, I guess you could say that In Place of Capital, it comes out of this particular failure, which is very well known about early photography, that, it was so slow because of chemical and optics, just practical technology meant that all exposures were these long exposures. And that meant that of course, like cityscapes and landscapes and whatnot seemed to be rather empty because anything moving through them wouldn't register on the photographic plate. And the seeing of this thing as a failure is what you could say drove certain developments within photography towards snapshot photography, toward having chemistry and optics that would allow for instantaneous exposures. So In Place of Capital kind of takes up this failure, and in particular in relation to a photograph of Henry Talbot's from 1845 in front of the Royal Exchange in London. and kind of draws out the thing that was seen as a failure from Talbot's side. Yes, this is one of there's a series of 4 images that he made. And it looks at this in relation to how Marx was describing capital at the time. Well, yeah, there's 2 different moments of the Marx, but that moment in particular, which is from the 2nd volume of Capital, where Marx describes capital in terms of this kind of that it is this thing which, well, the final phase of the circulation of, but in describing money capital. Actually, is it possible to go back a little bit in that film that was up there? Yeah, there. Great. So precisely this moment in the circuit of money capital, the final phase where money has first sort of bought labor and machinery. Those have gone together, and then the objects of the products from that are sold on the market, and money is kind of returned to itself, but with a surplus. And at this moment, only at this very moment, when money sort of is gotten back from the sale of these products, there is this kind of connection to how this increase actually happened, but that connection immediately disappears. So it has this kind of amnesia, you could say, built into the movement, built into the circuit. And so basically this failure that was happening within photography to be able to register the movement, or to be able to register moving bodies on a given photographic plate, what was seen as a failure from the standpoint of photographers such as Talbot, writing explicitly about this failure in relation to images like these. From Marx's perspective, you could say was actually a sort of expression of the capital relation. And so these early photographs, which seem to have this technical flaw, actually were, you could say, at that moment, had this ability to kind of, if not illustrate, at least to sort of express this commonality to capital and their mutual failure to sort of capture this movement and see it. So anyway, that kind of stood at the heart of that film, and was then used to look at what was happening within the financial crisis at that time, and various imagery in relation to that. Yeah, I think maybe I will stop it. I mean, I think in a way it's difficult for me to describe this film in this context. I think it would be nice to have to maybe hear from Joana, and then also use it a bit responsibly, because I feel like it also is. It's maybe something. I mean, we have talked about this, Aude, that it is a bit out of time somehow in relation to because it's describing a very different moment than the moment that is taken up perhaps within your theory of Algotaylorism. But maybe that's something interesting to talk about after. I don't want to. I feel like now I've gone on a bit too long.
Yeah, so we can hear from Joana, sure, and then go on discussing that right after. So Joana is from Spain. She's an artist and a researcher, And her work has been exhibited notably at the Venice Biennial, the Maxi in Rome, the CCCB, the ZKM in Karlsruhe, and the HEC in Basel, among many other places. And it explores and critiques how techno-capitalist narratives affect the literacy of machines, humans, and ecosystems. And Joana also co-founded the Critical Interface Politics Research Group and the Institute for the Advancement of Popular Automatisms. And I actually would love to hear about it a little bit too. And she teaches at the University of Potsdam and the Escola Elisava in Barcelona. So Joana, you can.
Yeah, thanks, Aude. Thanks, Valerie, as well. And thanks, Zach, for the presentation talk. All right, it's for me, likewise, Zach, it's very hard to me to speak about my work and to put it in context, right? Because it's a bit hard to go out from yourself and understand where you're at, or to understand your trajectory. So I don't even know where to start. I mean, generally, I say to be my work at the intersection of art and research, and more lately I've introduced a little bit more investigative journalism, because I feel that a lot of things that I do have a big relationship with that, especially with one of my latest projects. Well, not so latest, I released it 2 years ago already, which actually that doesn't make it that old, but in the art space it seems like, wow, this is so old. Which is called The Dating Brokers, as I said, which I looked into all this ecosystem of online dating apps and websites that exploited data. Yeah, so I could just, this was like sort of, I think it was more investigative journalism, one part than anything else, but I found out later when I talked to some journalists and they asked me how I did it, and some of them even asked me like the techniques I use, which were super naive. Anyway, so my work really looks at all this ecosystem of data that builds our so-called data economy, right? And not just from the perspective of data exploitation, but also from the perspective of infrastructures, materialism at large, and especially environmental impact and the relationship of data users, infrastructures, and nature. And I'm going more towards this field in other areas, not just data, but also like how we build electronics, electronic devices, global chain of production, acceleration of production, and its relationship to extractivist practices, etc., etc. So the hidden life of an Amazon user, which is the work I present at the exhibition, it's a result of many years of research, especially when it comes to online tracking, which is this action of tracking user activity online. It's more like corporate surveillance, like governmental surveillance. I use exactly the same techniques, but for other purposes. But that's what I did for many years, reveal technologies that allow corporate surveillance to exist, and the environmental impact of such processes. So the hidden life, it's a very, actually, like most of my projects, I think they're quite silly at the end. They're very, very simple. It's not a big thing or a big display of things at the end, right? So what I show there, it's all the process that it took me to buy a book in Amazon, which was a book by Jeff Bezos called Life and Lessons for Success. And then it has like an incredibly long subtitle, but I never remember. It's like the life, the wisdom, and the learning. It's basically like, the journey, the teachable moments, rules for success, cultivated from the life and wisdom of Jeff Bezos. One of his better, I think the best advices that he gave was sleep 8 hours, which is like, wow. Anyway. So even though like I always say the same thing, so the joke starting to be very old, but even though like this very long title and subtitle, the book just had like 62 pages. It's like really, really thin. Yeah, and the typography, that's great, thank you. Is there someone there now, or you already pre-recorded this?
It's pre-recorded.
Oh, wow. Obnoxious. Anyway, so the font size is very big as well. So what I did, I just tracked myself throughout all the interfaces that allow me to buy this book in Amazon. So I did the minimum amount of steps possible in the website to buy this book. So I had to go through 12 different interfaces, yeah? And at the same time, I looked at all the code that made all these interfaces exist and operate, and also track user data at large. So it was more than 80 megabytes of information, which translated, as you can see it here, in a lot of code, almost 10,000 pages of printed code. It's a massive tower. It's just massive. And as you can see here in the exhibition, you could just paper a whole wall and you still had like some leftovers, right? So we don't tend to understand that all these processes are so energy intensive, yeah? And all the materiality that allows all these companies to fulfill their business models, which basically are based on extracting every single thing that they can from the user. Yeah? So this project really talks about this double exploitation of the user, which as user, it's just not forced to, it's just not being exploited by means of free labor, in the sense that all your online activity or like user data is being quantified and commodified by these companies in order to ultimately have some economic revenue, increase economic revenue. But the user is also forced to assume part of the energy consumption and therefore environmental impact of such processes, because all this code, these 80 megabytes of code, were downloaded in my computer. Yeah, this wasn't in Amazon servers. They came from some Amazon servers into my computer. Yeah, and part of the work of surveilling, tracking, extracting data happened using the energy from my computer. And we don't tend to see surveillance practices from this point of view, right? So really this project, that's what it aims at, to highlight like this double exploitation of the user. If you scroll down the whole project, you can find it online in my website, is available there. It's about 14 minutes of scroll, which is a lot, yeah? So anyway, like I believe that highlighting this accumulation of materials would allow the user to understand that those processes are energy intensive, and they are executed by us, and we are forced to execute this. Yeah, there is no negotiation with Amazon or any other platform whatsoever. So I think I leave it at that, because I think I also spoke a lot. We can discuss or anything you have in mind.
Yes, thank you, Joana. In the exhibition, we actually chose to print the code, so it amounts to around like 10,000 something A4 pages that are pinned on the wall, as you might have seen, and also stocked on the floor in little piles. So yeah, I think it's 10,485 A4 pages.
It always changes, depends on the exhibition.
Yeah.
I mean, some museum just called me the other day if I wanted the sheets back. It was funny. No, I mean, I don't need them, of course.
But I mean, I hope it's very impressive for the visitors anyway, because I think it's really, that's why I chose it, because I mean, it's also about, of course, disclosing everything that people are not aware of, and of course, this was really stunning as an installation. I was also I find it very funny that we are actually discussing today because of everything that happens in the news, and especially with the fact that we also learned like a very few days ago that Jeff Bezos is retiring, which is also makes it very ironical to me, yeah, to have him. I mean, basically, his picture is the first thing you see when you enter the exhibition, so it's kind of the granddad of this show, so it makes it quite funny. But another another fact I think is interesting is like, Zach, you pointed that the origin of in place of capital was the subprime crisis, and so by my side I chose to make it the introduction of the exhibition for its historical take on the history of photography as a technology for the improvement, if I can say, of division of labor. It's just like it's like at the exact same time, which takes us back to 2008. Bitcoin was created, and I don't know, because the exhibition unfolds with a few takes on cryptocurrencies, with notably Sasho Sedlacek's project, which allows visitors to mine his own cryptocurrency while doing nothing, while standing still, with a mechanism of pose recognition. And I wanted to know also if it's something that that sparked some interest, of course, from both of you, and also in the light of today's news that Tesla, that is to say Elon Musk's company, bought 1.5 billion of Bitcoin, just like, you know, also as this kind of counterculture currency that was created at this exact moment, and that is now, you know, being invested in by one of the biggest companies in the world. I just thought like there's a lot of irony in all this, of course, in the idea that in 2008 there's been the explosion of the crisis, and it's also in this light that Bitcoin was created, of course, to try to counter the crisis in a way, if I can summarize that this way. And so as we were talking about this 2008 year with Zachary, I was finding it very ironical that I just got that in the news today, that so Tesla, which is one of the biggest company right now, but invested in Bitcoin, which was this alternative currency at the start. And we are seeing more and more big companies today investing in it.
Yeah. I personally haven't really. I mean, the whole cryptocurrency thing, I think it's kind of funny because it does sort of go through these waves. Now again, it's like at such a huge value, and people, you know, it's like this hot spot for investment and stuff. But personally, I haven't really taken it up in any work that I've ever done. But I mean, for me, the subprime crisis was, I think, and there were several works that I did afterwards that addressed this more explicitly, but it really, there was this kind of, what was interesting for me was the way that it was discussed in the media as actually in relation to the media, in relation to how the circulation of images actually affected the crisis. So it was, and this was something which I found out was not very unique about it actually, but that whenever there are these financial crises, this is precisely when a discussion emerges in the media about representation, and you know, how circulating an image or whether circulating an image will actually, you know, cause effects within the financial sphere, or, you know, whether showing, you know, the explicit thing that happened in 2007 was this, you know, you had these bank queues that formed in front of particularly Northern Rock Bank in England. And they had this whole government committee that investigated then afterwards what the decision-making process was in the newspapers behind printing these images, because in printing the images, of course, more people saw these things and went and stood in the lines, and, you know, the crisis was therefore worsened. So there was this discussion that came up about what the kind of responsibility of the press was in reporting on events that happen. And so it also kind of revealed that the financial sector is a sector which is, at least implicitly, to be invisible. And then when it becomes visible, it's not functioning properly, that it should be a thing. And this very much relates, I think, to the Amazon, you know, massive amount of data. Like if we were aware of that, if we had to page through 14 minutes of, then we of course would never buy this book that is probably containing less text than the code that it takes to make that simple purchase. But that this is like a constitutive characteristic of finance, and that's also with that with Marx's formula for capital and this disappearance of the character of the history of the production of the profit, basically, or of the surplus, that this is continually disappearing, and that it has to. If it appears, then it won't happen, basically. So there is this kind of trade-off that there, well, maybe it goes too far with that, but I think the point is, anyway. I'll stop there. I have a hard time laughing, as you can. But anyway, that was my interest in the. So I know this is not answering your question about cryptocurrency, but for me that was the interest in that crisis, and I don't know the extent to, was that really the case that that was sort of seen as a response to the crisis, the invention of Bitcoin?
I mean, it's been said too. Yeah, I mean, it was conceived. I mean, I can't say, of course, for sure in response, but yeah, I mean, mostly because also, I mean, as you may know, like the headline of the time, the London Time, I guess, yeah, from January, I'm forgetting the exact date, but January 2008 is locked in the code of the first block of the Bitcoin blockchain. And this is a headline about the government of England bailing out banks. So, I mean, it refers directly to it. And it was also, of course, anyway, designed as a sort of, alternative currency, if we can put it gently like this. But, so, yeah, I mean, I just find it very, very ironical.
It is the currency that is supposed to track itself. I guess that's the other thing. So that would make it very different from this notion of, or that would cause problems for the Marxist notion of the circuit of money capital, at least, where you can of course track it in the books to a certain extent, but this disappearance is supposed to not happen in Bitcoin. Like it's the ledger is supposed to contain the whole history and this kind of
Yeah, I actually even like in the first chapter of the exhibition chose to present what is called a Maxis Cryptocurrency designed by Telecommunisten, a collective of artists from mostly Berlin, and we explored the sort of contradictory statement in this idea of, of course, designing a Marxist money, but it's designed to also be very ecological and run on old hardware. So it's Marxist, eco-friendly. Valerie? Yes, I think you had questions too. I don't know if you want, because I see time is running.
Yes, thank you. So I think just one question, because effectivement time is running. It's for Joana, because the visitor, when they visit the exhibition, always ask us, how did you manage to get all the code?
Well, that's a lot of people ask me this, but it's so easy. You can do it through your browser. It's not rocket science. You just go to so if you're using Firefox, you just go to the inspect panel, network, and then you go check all the requests that are being done, and you go one by one, and you'll find the code. It's not rocket science. The difficult thing is to read the code, and even if you're an engineer, you won't understand anything. I mean, you will understand, you will get a hint of, okay, these things happen here, these things happen there, but you don't really understand all the things that they're going to extract or how things are working. So, yeah, and I also wanted to say something I forgot to say before. Like the installation display was not my idea, it was Aude's proposal, and it was great. So, yeah, I mean, it worked really great, because I remember you proposed it, because I remember you said that I was in front of Sam, and and you proposed this, so I'm very, very happy. But generally, I do it differently, so that's great. So it's very easy, indeed. It's really easy.
Okay, many thanks.
But again, it's what Zach said, that yeah, I mean, it's a brilliant sentence, right? Everything has to be hidden for the system to run smooth. So again, if we would really need to intervene all the code or load everything, like some of these processes would be less automated, then things wouldn't go. And I think that in that sense, like metaphors have a huge role here in how system is being explained to us. As for example, the metaphor of the cloud, right? It's so super easy. It's almost celestial and stuff, and that's the idea of the internet, right? And many others, even the idea of the click, which is the end, it's just like a sound, right? And we attribute it to an action, which indeed, if we would explain what a click actually is, what it actually is, would not click at all, probably. Same thing goes with the scroll and many other things. Yeah. So, which it's not the things that there's all this jargon that doesn't describe at all what things are, but it gives us an idea, a very, very clear picture what things are, but they are not, and we just make this connection, right? Which I think is interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's also very much with any kind of like imagery that we like, photography today. There's no reason to do it the way we do it with the technology that we have, but it's all like kind of made to emulate this model that was produced in the 19th century and is seen as the model of reality, that correspond, that particular image of reality is closer than any other that we sort of, yeah.
Yeah, but why would you think it is so? Actually, it's a really good question, I think. Like, what would you think? I mean, what do you think that the mechanisms are hidden also in the photographical process right now?
Yeah. Why?
Yeah. Why do you think it is? Like, do you have any opinion on that? Like, why would they hide it from the people? Like, is it? What is to hide in that?
Yeah, but it's necessary in every. I mean, we live in some sort of turbo capital era, right? Where speed also maximizes profit, and knowing how things work and showing how structures work, how systems work, is displaying complexities, and complexities means stopping things. I mean, makes things slower. Yeah, and capital cannot afford that, especially when it's based on a premise that. Growing, it's also increasing speed. I mean, it goes together with time. I mean, that could be one possible answer.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of. I mean, it is. I think it's very much linked to this thing that things have to be. They have to keep moving at all costs.
Yeah, would we be afraid actually to see how it works? Like, I think for my part, I have to say I was really shocked when I learned how digital photography was working. Like that, of course, that not any image was properly recorded as an image or as what your eye thinks or makes you think it captures. And I mean, I still see that many people don't even also consider this, and so. What would it take?
Are you talking about like this computational photography? Yeah, because that's sort of another. I mean, that's like a development within this. I think that is indeed kind of that of course like camera phones are made to sort of produce the images that they have already produced somehow. They like. They're really good at portraits of certain, that play up certain features and all these things that we think that it doesn't do, that it is like an unfiltered image, but the filtration is happening to a greater, or it isn't filtration. It's indeed like, it's integrated very much in within the technology more than we think. We think it's still an optical technology, but it's becoming increasingly less so. I mean, it still uses a lens, but it actually, we don't need, there are cameras now that don't use lenses, and that's kind of a strange thing to understand for, I think, people like of our generation, or whatever, people who grew up when photography was, who actually I studied photography in school. For me, like a photograph, it's very, it always relates to that. And yeah, if it looks like that, then I assume it was made optically, even if there is some, and anything, that's the basis, and this other, but it's not necessarily the basis anymore. There is like through and through computational photography, but I don't know that much about that stuff, the computational photography, but it's interesting. It's weird.
I have no clue whatsoever, so I can't comment on that.
No, I was just wondering if you would think that it would scare people away or something, like give us a similar feeling to people that finally would understand that machines are way more independent than we think.
But are they really?
I mean, I don't know. In these processes of digital photography, I tend to think so. But
yeah, but the infrastructure that allows these images to exist is very much guided by, I wouldn't say, human labor as in the classic sense of labor, but it is. And ultimately, nature is what allows all these things to exist, right? So, yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, and I also think though, like that there are these historical models that are built into something like computational photography, and the kind of, in a way, it's maybe less even autonomy of the machine, because these kinds of images that we see as photographic images, these machines are built to make images that resemble those, and that comes from a particular historical moment, and those machines are harnessed to reproduce that image over and over again. So they're kind of stuck to something that is very much a human creation, a social creation, the images that we've seen historically. But yeah, I don't know. It has the potential for being very autonomous, but I think the scariness, in a way, is not so much the autonomy in that sense. Just got some message there, but yeah, it is more that it's more like in this kind of that we are stuck with this old model that is that kind of. I don't know. I think that there is. It's not so much that the autonomy of the machine, I think, as it is the reinforcing that the machine does at scale. That it picks up things that exist and it reproduces like existing relations in a way that we don't have the power to do unassisted. And the reproduction of those existing problems is what I think is scary.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And I think it also has to do with the imaginaries that these machines produce, which is very, when they are, let's say, in charge of social reproduction, they produce certain imaginaries, which I think they're very hard to break in many ways. So I think that's probably the danger as well, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, which was one of the ideas actually driving this room where I put your works facing each other. So. But I don't know, maybe, Joana, it's time for you, or...
Yeah, you should leave soon.
Okay, so I guess Well, thank you, of course, for coming today. Try to have this kind of human connection, machine-mediated human connection, to talk about this exhibition that explores, what I said earlier. But I guess Valérie, maybe you want to conclude, or just.
Yes, just to thank you a lot for participating. It's our first meeting online. So many thanks, Joana and Zachary, and of course our curator, Aude, for this very interesting meeting. And everything will be put on our website channel and our website. So you can find also our visit online of the exhibition on our channel website. So many thanks. Hope you enjoy it, and hope to see you in blood and flesh one time.
I hope so. I would really love to see the exhibition, really much.
Yeah. But great exhibition.
Next time.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to be a phantom of an exhibition, and
Oh God. Well, maybe I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what will happen, because I don't think this will stop anytime soon. But we'll see. Anyway, thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, a nice meeting all of you.
Bye bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye bye.